All right. Hey, how are you guys doing? I am here with my boy, Erick Prince, Minority Nomad. What's up, man?
Yeah. What's up? What's up?
Yes, I just want to welcome you guys all to the third episode of School Daze, where we learn from creators around the world about their creative process and also some really great behind the scenes tips that we think that you can use right away in your workflow. So, Erick, man, so you are chilling up in Bangkok, right?
Yeah, it's driving me crazy not being out shooting, but yeah, I got a great view of the city. I'm out here looking at the skyline and relaxing. Got a little shopping done today, but yeah, I'm dying here. I'm like, oh my god, other people do this for months on end. It's great.
It's so crazy. I mean, so what happened when, in terms of like with COVID and everything right now, did your workflow just kind of shift and change, or are you still working right now?
Absolutely. You know what? I've always had multi streams of income, and since travel photography was like number 3 on the list, I wasn't hit as hard as other people.
Yeah.
But travel photography has always been my creative outlet. Photography is like my love language, as they say. So I can never really get away from it. So I'm going through the archives. I'm actually redesigning my blog. I've redesigned my portfolio site, which are 2 separate things. And I found myself going back and looking at old photos that I took, re-editing those, kind of finding the context, telling more stories. So my workflow, it's very similar to what it was before, but the ratio, the percentage of energy that I'm putting in different places has shifted a bit. So my money's getting crazy tight because you're starting to lose sources of income. You don't know what money's going where. I've had to, personally pull back on a lot of things that I wanted to kind of buy and invest in. And I was like, yeah, let me hold on to a couple of dollars for a while just to see how this thing plays out. But overall, my workflow is very similar to what it was before overall. I work, 12, 13 hours a day, give or take. But I'm doing different things than I was before. But travel photography, which is what we'll be talking about today, I'm more in the reflective mode now, developing more skills, putting a little more time into my own photography theory, because I think every photographer has their own theory about photography, and I'm kind of working on mine. And I want to actually start doing books, creating books. Like one photo book here, because I think we've gone so far digital that we've lost touch with the beauty of photography. And I want to start doing prints, actually do a lot more prints this year. I've been doing prints for years, but that hasn't been like a primary thing for me. So I'm focusing my energy on that side of photography now.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, I remember, goodness, I think it was a couple of years ago, maybe about 2.5 years ago. And it's just, because we have so many mutual friends in the space, and your name just kept popping up. And I'm like, who is this Erick guy? Like, I need to meet this guy. Come on now. I mean, and one thing that people would always say is just like how professional you are, how real you are, and how extremely talented you are. So with all of those
I'm
things,
sure there's been some other stuff said about me too over the years.
No lies told, okay? We ain't sharing all the secrets, all right? Some things gotta stay in Bangkok, okay? No, but seriously, I mean, just through mutual friends, I just thought, this is someone that Omo and I need to meet. And I know you actually got a chance to meet Omo first, and he was telling me, he's like, oh yeah, man, Erick, he's a cool dude, man. He's a cool dude.
I thought I met you first. I actually thought you were somebody totally different.
It's like I had a twin in the house.
This is what happened.
All black people look alike. All black people look alike.
Somebody introduced, I can't remember her name. She works at the ad firm in Travels with Melanin. That's what it is. Melanin Travels. Melanin Travels. They introduced her as Hey Dip Your Toes In. Oh, that's, she's from Hey Dip Your Toes In. So when I met Omo, I was like, oh man, I met your wife at World Travel Market last year. He was like, oh really? Yeah. So we were going back and forth as if I had already met you. And then I saw a picture of you. I'm like, that's not who I met at all. That's not her at all.
No.
But yeah, it was really good. What I love about you guys is your love for visual arts. And a lot of people in our industry, they use visual arts because it's what we do as bloggers. It's how people engage, but they don't really understand or love the craft of what we do. But you guys really get it. You're a photographer. Photographer. There are a lot of people who have massive followings. They are not photographers, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But you understand the craft and the art. So that's why I really, I'm so glad we've become friends over the years.
Same.
I share, tips and tricks and ideas and views about photography. It's so good.
I always say, if creators who are looking to become photographers, like, just continue to master your craft. And the best thing you can do is to actually really learn from people like yourself. So, I mean, we're going to be going into this whole learning thing, but, before we do, Erick, is, in terms of your journey with Minority Nomad and creating that as a brand, did you always imagine that photography and storytelling from a journalistic perspective would be something that would be merged in your career path.
Not really. I mean, this career path just happened, and I just fell into it. Photography has always just been that side thing that I enjoy to do. It's like some people who you've met who are doctors or lawyers or writers. They're fantastic singers, for example.
Yeah.
And it's because that was just a side passion they did. They just enjoyed it. It was something they loved. It wasn't meant to be a financial endeavor or a career.
Yeah.
It was just something they loved. For me, photography was something that saved my life. And I've been shooting since I was 13 years old. So
amazing.
It's an outlet for me creatively. And in a space, in an environment where I was not really accepted for who I was, it was just one of those things that I gravitated towards. And then I joined the military, and I was on my way to law school and all these things, and photography was always that thing. And when I started to kind of push and focus on photography as a career, it totally opened the world up because I had a different perspective. The great thing about photography is that it allows you to show your perspective on the same thing. If you take 5 photographers, and we've seen this on press trips, you can take 5 photographers and have them shoot the exact same thing at the exact same time, and all of their images are going to be different because we see things differently. We tell stories differently. Unfortunately, when I started, it was, me, Onika, it was Greg Gross, Kerwin McKenzie, like
the OGs, the real OGs.
Okay, so get mad at me for calling them old too. But when we started, there weren't a lot of people who looked like us creating content from a different perspective. And furthermore, if you take out all the Black women who are doing this professionally, it's not a lot of us. Brothers who are doing this professionally, like Black men, not a lot of us at all.
Yeah.
So our perspective is so different. One of the greatest photographers of all time, Gordon Parks. The reason we know about Harlem during the Harlem Renaissance is because of Gordon Parks and his work. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to show the world my perspective. When I go to Paris, I'm not a big fan of Paris, but I can see a different side of Paris that other people can't. I get access to things that they can't get access to. I went to Gare du Nord, which is where all the Africans are in that area, and I hung out with Africans. And they showed me a side of Paris that a middle-class white person from Boston probably couldn't see, because I could empathize, I could understand, I have some background knowledge in that view. So when I started photography, my goal was always to tell the story of the place from my perspective. And I think something's being lost here, where you'll look at Instagram, somebody's Instagram, they have 180,000 followers. But every post is about them, about their experience. And the world's like, well, what are you teaching me? What are you teaching me about Fiji or about Istanbul or about Cape Town, South Africa? Yeah, you look good in the selfie, but what are you teaching us? What are we learning about the places that you're going? Or is the narrative that you get to travel? Is that the story? So, and I'll touch on that a little bit in what we're going to cover today, but that's how I've shaped my career and my content and my business. Is I want to share the stories of the places that I go and the people that are there.
Nice. I love that. When you talked about access, that you like being in Paris, like having access to a specific community. And I think that's what's so important about having diverse voices in the travel industry like yourself. So being able to provide that kind of dual narrative and having access to these communities. And I'm so glad that, you touched on that and mentioned that, because it's super, super important that it's not just a one-sided narrative, that we're seeing, multifaceted narratives. So it's great. And I think you're just doing such a great job. I mean, and so in terms of that translating into your work, what I wanted to do now is to actually turn the tables over to you and give you some time to be able to share a little bit more about your work and some really pertinent tips that I think the audience can take home. Well, they're already home. They're staying at home. They're standing behind the home learning, okay? So yes, it's all yours.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. So what I wanted to do was, I want to teach people how to tell better stories through photography, travel photography. I liken myself a writer. I write the way that I speak. I'm a presenter. But my first love, my foundation and core of storytelling is my photography and my work. So what I want to do is I want to show you guys some of my work and illustrate 3 points that I use to kind of dictate my storytelling format. So I want to go here and share screen. So this is my smug mug, and I created specifically this series of images to tell the stories and the points that I wanted to kind of get across. So the very first thing you have to decide is, who is your story about? So now we have a culture and a movement, a blogger community who constantly tells their own story. Their story is the primary narrative. If you look back at the work of amazing presenters like Anthony Bourdain, the story isn't about Anthony Bourdain.
Right.
He doesn't say a lot when he's actually presenting a show. You hear him at the beginning, you hear him at the end, but he largely shuts up in the middle and allows people to tell their own stories. And that's what we need to do. We need to allow the destination and the communities and the people to tell their own stories. So here are some images, and I'm going to explain why I shot them, a little bit of background about the images and the history, okay? So this was the Kumbh. The Kumbh is the largest gathering of humans ever. I believe this last one that I attended was 30 million people in the same place at one time. It's a Hindu pilgrimage. And these are the Naga sadhus. So my job was to capture the essence of this event. And I believe, and I'll get into this a little bit later, I believe you can tell pretty much every story in 3 images. So that's what I kind of want to do here. So these 2 gentlemen, they were brothers right here, and the orange robe represents their holiness, their holy men. So basically they're Hindu monks, and they used to be warrior monks. So the cool thing about shooting images and events like this is you have a level of authenticity. The story is not about me or my experience there. It's about these 2 gentlemen and what they're doing. In this image, this is one of my favorite images that I've ever taken. So as press, we were there, about 40 journalists covering this event. And it's a religious event. It's their worship. They go to the Ganga, the Yangam and Sangam. It's the triumvirate. The 3 rivers come together, and it's the most holy place in the world. So these people, they come from all around India, all around the world, to go and bathe and wash away their sins in the water. And as journalists, as Westerners, we were housed not with the pilgrims, which all these people were, who had, a lot of them were sleeping on the ground in tents. We were housed in luxury tents on the other side of the city, about an hour away. We had hot showers. We had king-size beds with comforters. We had our own private dining facility. We basically had servants the entire time. When we came here, the police actually took us through a side entrance, and they opened this bridge because they create these bridges across the river. They're floating bridges, and they're temporary bridges. So for safety reasons, they open and close them periodically to manage the flow of people going across for safety. They literally closed the bridge just for us, 40 people. It's thousands of people waiting, but they closed it for us. As we're going through, this lady here was livid. She was mad. Why can't she go? She's a local. This is her home. Why can't she go through? And the police stopped her. She was trying to come over, and she was upset. So this is part of the story. Now, granted, you don't get all of that context from just looking at the image. You don't really know what's happening. You see an elderly woman trying to climb over. But with my added narrative, now you know the entire story.
Right.
If you just look at the image, you look at her, the anguish and how upset she is in her face. Then you look at the women here, just looking at her and trying to figure out what to do. And you see the crowds here of people, just the massive group of people. You can kind of understand what's going on here.
Right. Wow.
So here is what everybody sees as the sadhus. The first image was they're more tame, more holy men, monk type. They're like Buddhist monks, very similar to Buddhist monks. But these men here are the Naga, which are going the extra level, the next step up of holiness. And I don't see right here, that's weed. They smoke a lot of weed, and I got a contact high just from being this close to them.
I can imagine.
But they do a lot of meditation. A lot of them are actually naked. They always call them the naked monks, because I actually ended up getting 2 images banned on Instagram because I posted them, and I didn't realize there was penis in the picture, like some guy's penis. I'm like, it didn't even resonate with me. So through those 3 images, I was able to kind of convey the experience, the different levels of worship there. Because if you look at all 3 images, there are different levels of faith, different convictions. So these gentlemen are at the highest level of the Naga. She is a pilgrim. They're somewhere in the middle. Right? They're basically the community envoys.
Right.
So that's the story through them. So here, I was documenting floating markets in Bangkok. And this lady, I was actually on a boat, and this lady comes up and she sells me the beer. So it's like, The story is about her and her life on the water. Here is the community aspect of the floating markets. They've been here for generations and they've grown up on these boats, in this commerce, in this industry. And then you have to ask yourself the question, if we as tourists didn't exist, what would they be doing? Well,
Right.
they would still be doing the same thing because they were here long before we were. Here you have an example of what's going on around it. All of these umbrellas, those are tourists. All of this color, that's from tourism to appeal to a tourist palette.
Right.
These boats weren't here. Right now, this is almost empty. In Bangkok right now, this is empty. So when you're creating these stories, when you're going out to shoot, when you're going to cover a destination, I challenge you to remove yourself from the narrative and see what you create. When the story is no longer about you. Right. I think one of the biggest mistakes that, and I'm assuming a lot of people who are going to be watching this are aspiring bloggers or photographers, and they want to tell a story. One of the drawbacks of right now is people can't tell their story because they're stuck at home.
Yeah.
But I can always tell the story of the Naga Sadhus or the Bangkok floating markets because I'm not part of that narrative.
Right.
And I present it as such. So whenever you get back to travel or you're able to take an opportunity to get back out there and start telling stories again, ask yourself whose story are you telling and why is it so important to tell whatever story you desire. And I'm not saying don't tell your story. I'm just saying try to look at things from a different perspective and it's going to open your mind to a lot more different narrative. So with that said, when you decide whose story you're telling, there has to be a level of ethics. Travel photography is street photography. I don't know why people keep trying to separate them into different things, but no. Travel photography is street photography. And the beauty about street photography is if you take the time to study street photography, which is the foundation of all photography started street.
Yeah.
Street portrait, that's it. If you learn street photography, you're going to be able to shoot for weddings, events, architecture, portraiture, everything. You can shoot anything. So when you're discussing ethics, it's a very hot topic because your ethical code is your code. There's no barriers to entry to photography or blogging or writing. So you have to decide what your moral compass is going to be. So I want to go over my moral compass, and I'm not judging if people don't adhere to my rules, but these are just some places that you might want to start, right? So one of the rules is I never shoot people or present people, in a vulnerable position. And these women were just coming from the laundry, walking home with their kid, and I didn't want to get a shot of their faces, because I didn't know how they would feel about the image because we were in their neighborhood. When you're in a place like Times Square, all right, and you take a picture of somebody, I believe there's no expectation of privacy there.
Right.
There's never a point where I think it's okay to photograph somebody in their house. Bangkok is a great example where you walk down the street and you can see right into people's homes. If somebody is homeless on the street, if somebody has, is crying and upset, I don't believe that's an appropriate time to take a photo of somebody. But this image, I love this image because you get all of the context of the community of these women finishing doing laundry and walking with their son. Or I assume it's their son. This image is an example of when you shoot children. So if you guys just look at the image, you can tell these are children here, but you can't make out their faces. And I intentionally shot it this way. I overexposed it and I brought up the shadows even more where you couldn't really make out the kids unless you tried. If you go here and I zoom in, you can kind of make out the kid's face. And here, this image will never be sold to anyone ever. I never sell images of children, and I usually ask the parents' permission to shoot them.
Yeah.
That's my code of conduct. Here, in regards to performers and street musicians, I always tip them or buy something from them.
Nice.
At all times. I think it's fucked up when photographers are out and they take pictures of street musicians and they don't tip $1, anything.
Yeah, something.
Especially if you're doing this professionally, if you're going to be putting it out in the world. Like I think it's just ridiculous. So I usually take the shot like this because I want it to be a candid shot. Then I'll ask him for another shot. I'll ask, hey, you mind if I take a shot of you? And when I do that, it usually gives me license to do whatever I want with the original shot,
Right.
the first shot. And I always tip them. So if he's got a CD, actually, I just think this gentleman, this was in London, Brick Lane. I believe he was just out there performing for tips. And he was just a really cool guy. We chatted for about 5 minutes about music, and it was just a really good experience. But I think one of the biggest issues for a lot of people, especially when it comes to this specific kind of situation, is they're afraid to approach people that they don't know.
Yeah,
because
it's true.
Out of the fear of being rejected or somebody being upset. I would tell you 99% of people would be like, yeah, okay, cool, whatever. And if they say no, it's just a word.
Yeah.
It's just, okay, no, thank you. What I don't like is when we take away people's license to say no. We take away that right for somebody like, nah, I'm good, please don't. Or if they see you taking a photo, they say, hey, do you mind deleting that? You delete the image. Or you walk away and you do it in a respectful way.
Right.
But I know a lot of people think differently. I've seen some street photographers, they'll run up in people's faces with a camera and a large flash to catch a reaction. I just think that's just bullshit. I think it's just absolutely terrible ethic. And I don't think it's even an ethical thing. I think it's just a human thing. It's just gross and disgusting. But again, we all have to decide what our moral compass is, and it's very important that you, as a photographer, you take the time to kind of decide what that's going to be. Last point: find out what the law states about photography in wherever you are, especially in sue-happy places like the U.S., the U.K., Canada, where somebody could sue you for the usage. This is something that a lot of photographers get in trouble for. Is selling those images out to other people when somebody's face can be recognized without a release. So that's something you guys got to think about, the legality of that. So Eric, how do you get these shots? Oh, I'm glad you asked that. So I have a 3-shot rule to keep things really simple. Sometimes I'll go up to my 5-shot rule, which I won't talk about right now, but I stick it to this 3-shot rule where I always kind of keep things moving forward. So the very first thing is going to be the environment, like what's going on around that subject, that image, that person, whatever, that event. And then it's going to be field of frame, basically the close-up, the macro shots. And then it's going to be scale. And scale has different meanings, and I'm going to go over that right now. So this was a festival, religious festival in Malaysia called Thaipusam. And Thaipusam is kind of similar to the Kumela or similar to the vegetarian festival in Thailand, where people, they pierce their cheeks. They put these long piercings through their cheeks. They put hooks in their bodies. They wear these long earlobe earrings. They put heavy burdens on their heads and carry them throughout the city all the way to the temple. They climb up all the stairs of the Batu Caves. A lot of people don't know Batu Caves. At the top, it's a Hindu temple. That's what Batu Caves is. It's a temple. So they climb up these stairs with these massive burdens, 50, 60, 70-pound burdens all the way to the top. And it's, mind you, I went there to cover this. I went up and down those stairs. It was like, I think it was like 247 or something like that. Up and down those stairs like 3 times. Oh, I was dying. But if you look here, you look at her cheek, and I actually watched the priest removed her piercings. She had 3 going through each side. And here you see where the hole was, right here on her cheek. That's where the hole was. And he uses a form of cow dung. They use, because cows are holy in Hinduism. So they use dried cow dung to kind of seal the wound on her cheek. And then she went into kind of a trance. This is the Hindu version of the Holy Ghost. Any Christian or Baptist person that have seen this, somebody pass it out in church, that's what this is. It's the equivalent of that. So this is the environment of this event. Like when you look at this image, like, is she okay? Does she need water? She passed out from the Holy Ghost. Here is this image sums up pretty much what's happening at the event, okay? So right here, this is called a burden. That's what he is. He's carrying a burden for his God. And right here, you see the hooks in his skin. Down here, you have his helpers. They're massaging his legs. And here, you have a young lady holding a plate for, basically, it's like a powder to kind of remark him. And that's what she's doing. She's remarking him. So it's a community aspect. Nobody's there by themselves with a burden, especially one this size. A lot of people have the smaller burdens, which is it's a milk. It's a thing of holy milk that they carry up. But when you have a larger burden, you have an entire team. It is, if you don't like religious ceremonies or events, go to Taipo Sam, and I guarantee you it'll change your mind. The perspective of these kind of events will be definitely changed. So these two images kind of show you the environment, what's going on, what's happening here. So here is Fill the Frame. So going back to the earlier point about ethics when it comes to children, not shooting children without parents' permission, I actually went up to him and asked him, like, do you mind if I take a picture of you and your baby? And he was happy to oblige. And that's how I ended up getting the baby to laugh, because the baby was frowning the entire time. And it was so cute because these are blessed reefs, and the reefs are bigger than the baby. And the baby is only 2 months old. And it shows where this culture, where this faith starts. They start very young. I ended up seeing kids who were barely 13 who had piercings through their cheeks. They start very early, integrating these kids into this culture, something that we would consider extreme in the West. So when you fill the frame like this, you take out all the distractions and you focus on the father's relationship with his child, it changes your perspective on things.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Right here. So this was a gentleman that I met. He ended up walking all the way from KL to the caves, which took him about 12 hours. And he did it barefoot with these veils on, the entire time while carrying a burden. And I wanted to photograph his feet. This image stood out to me because it shows the commitment and dedication to their faith, the hard work and the sacrifices they make to show reverence to their God and to their community. When you fill the frame, it takes away all the distractions and allows you to focus on the thing that you want your audience to focus on. And for me, I want people to focus on the wear of his feet. And last but not least is this frame. So this is one of my favorite and least favorite images because it's a bad shot. And I wanted to show you guys this to show you that you can't always get the perfect shot. My goal in this image was to get the burden, which is what this is. This is his burden, his helper, she's helping him, and his face, his emotion. But it was ruined because I couldn't quite get close enough. I didn't have the right lens on, so I couldn't get close enough. And there was a barrier, kind of a barrier between where I was walking and where he was walking. I was going down, he was coming up, and I was trying to reach over, but I couldn't get it. And then this gentleman actually stopped, and he kind of ruined the frame. Not ruined it, but he got in my frame where you couldn't get the bokeh in the background of the temple. So for me, I still think it's an okay photo, but sometimes there's nothing you can do. And that's the beauty of travel photography. You have to be ready to accept the fact that sometimes you just won't get the shot. It just won't happen. No matter what you do, no matter how you prepare, you won't get the shot. But the reality is this image, his look, her helping him still tells a story. And even in failure, we can learn something. I learned that I probably should shoot with an 85 1.4 lens next time I go shoot this event because of the lighting conditions, the reach that I need, and the kind of shots that really tell the story that I want to tell. So even when you don't get the shot, look at it, dissect it, and decide, okay, this is what I wanted to get, this is why I didn't get it, and this is what I can learn. And the last image I want to show you is what people consider scale. Look how dense this group is. And you can, it's like a Where's Waldo, those old Where's Waldo things, and you kind of look through it because everything is so very similar. And on everybody's head, you see these are filled with milk. These are people's burdens that they're going into the temple to give offering. These are people here in the background that actually just did theirs. They already went up, did their offering, and they're coming back. But you can feel the crowd. You can feel how tight it is in there. And I think we're losing the fundamentals of photography. And that was the last image in that one. I think, in that little presentation, I wanted to kind of convey my way of storytelling and just some tips and ideas that people can use to kind of develop their voice. A lot of people out here take fantastic photos, but the only way to consistently take great photos is to kind of create a system. And this is my system. You determine whose story or what story you're telling, even before you pick up your camera. Mm-hmm. The pregame is very important. The scouting is very important. Finding out information about the people and the event and what's acceptable and what's not. It gives you an opportunity to create and craft a story as well as being respectful. That leads into the ethics of photography. Do your research. Find out what is ethical, what is okay to do, how you should dress. I see so many people come to Thailand, for example, and they get upset when they have to dress a certain way to go into a temple. There was a very big, YouTuber slash Facebook guy. He went to Brunei, and he was bitching about not being able to take video inside the mosque, the Grand Mosque there. And I was Muslim before. I'm non-religious now, but I was Muslim. And I ended up being able to take a couple photos there, maybe a month before he went. And the reason was because I understand Islam. I understand the Muslim community there, and I spoke to them respectfully, and I requested permission. This guy's issue was, oh, it's a public space. And like, that's not how it works. It's because I understand, I researched, I studied,
Right.
I interacted, and I asked for permission respectfully. And I think we're at a point where we're so entitled as photographers or creators that we forget the human element of what we do. So secondly, come up with your code of ethics. And lastly, have a shot list.
Yes.
You're not going to get any shots if you don't have a shot list. If I'm in London, I'm like, okay, if I'm documenting London, I want to go to Borough Market, I want to go to one of the museums, and I want to go to one of the bridges. That's for me, off the top of my head, those are the 3 sites that I'm going to go shoot.
Yeah.
And when I go shoot in those 3 sites, I'm going through the environment, the field of frame, and ensuring that I'm getting the shots that I really need. What's the scale of the Tate Modern, for example? How do I capture the scale of Tate? You know, so it's interesting. Like, even I can think of it right now in Tate Modern. You've been in Tate before, right?
Yes, definitely.
Separated into 2 buildings, there's a bridge. Separated buildings, and you walk across the bridge, and you can see down. It's a perfect shot to show the scale of Tate Modern, because Tate is a big warehouse. That's what it is.
It is massive.
Just a warehouse. So having these shot lists in our head, it allows us to create the stories in the proper way. So I believe if you take those 3 things, if you take anything away from this talk, is make sure you're telling the story properly and decide whose story that is. Develop your own code of ethics and have a shot list. I shoot Sony cameras, and the A7, I use the A7 III. So with a 24-105, it's a pretty big setup. And a lot of places over the years have said no professional photography.
Right.
And, you know, as photographers, like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, how do you know, what is it? It's like, they basically mean no big cameras.
Right.
So I ended up buying a A6500 with a wide angle lens because I know that most places that don't want you in there with a big camera is usually like a museum or a religious site or something like that. And it's going to be wide. White's going to look good there.
Right.
And it's conspicuous. It's a very small setup, and it still gets high quality professional images. And that comes from doing research. And it's not even just a photographer thing. I think it's a traveler thing too. And for people of color, especially for women, especially for gay folk, you got to do your research before you go to a place, and it's going to make your experience significantly better.
Yeah, and that's what it's about. It's like educating. I just feel like not necessarily that it is our sole responsibility, but I think that when we step into positions of influence where, you know, it doesn't matter the amount of followers you have or anything, but I think when it comes to sharing our work and sharing our work with confidence, it's important to be able to share these stories and share this type of advice. You know, and also, like you said, just making sure that it's backed by, you know, ethics and by facts and research.
I mean, it's a simple thing. Like, we have to start questioning our sources. We have to start forcing people to verify these things they're saying, because there's so many people. The more I work in this industry, the more I see people are full of shit. They do not know what you're talking about. They'll say something about a place or an event. I'm like, that's not true. I'm here. I'm literally sitting here right now. What you're saying is wrong, and it's destructive, and it's harmful. I can't tell you how many people I've seen who's like, oh, I'm never going to Thailand because they're racist. I'm like, yo, why are you listening to this person? This person has not earned your trust. I think it goes back to one simple point, is we live in a world where people aren't forced to earn trust anymore. Where if they have 100,000 followers or whatever, or they're on the cable news, or they're the president of the United States, they're automatically trustworthy. I don't trust nobody. I don't trust nobody. You got to earn my trust. Every single person I meet, you have to earn my trust.
Yes.
And I'm like, of course, I'm going to be respectful of you. I'm not going to be rude to you, but I'm not going to take what you say at just
just face value.
That's the gospel.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it's face value. All right, cool. But I kind of want to double check this. You know?
Exactly.
And I really hope that that's something people get out of this. Not even just in photography and travel, but in everything in life. If somebody tells you you don't need to wear a face mask, let me double check that with some other sources.
Yeah.
If somebody tells you you do. If somebody tells you you do need to wear a face mask, double check that with other sources.
Double check.
Double check everything, especially when it comes to your health, it comes to your money, it comes to your time, it comes to your energy, it comes to your family. Double check everything.
100%. Oh man, listen, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I just want to say thank you so much for
so much fun.
sharing this.
I love doing this. I love doing this.
Such great tips. And I just want to encourage those that are watching, if you have questions, feel free to ask them, of course, directly under the video. But if you have any other questions that you feel like, you know what, I just would love to connect with Erick one-on-one, just make sure you slide into those DMs and send him a message. Now, Erick,
I respond to all questions and comments, 100%.
Yes.
Everybody will always get a response from me.
Always. And so, Erick, how can people reach you? Where's the best places to find you?
Instagram. Right now, Instagram, really. That's my favorite platform for engagement and posting and smack talking. I love Instagram. So you reach me on Instagram, Minority Nomad. Of course, I have minoritynomad.com. But excuse the site, I'm doing a full rework of that. You guys just saw my SmugMug account, which I'm re-uploading all of my content. So I have thousands of images to go through and get on SmugMug. So that's going to take me about 2 months to get through. And everything, you'll find me anywhere, Minority Nomad. I'm all over the internet and social media, same name.
And for all of those tuning in, that you feel like you've learned something from this particular episode of School Daze, all of our creators have partnered up with a chosen charity. So they're all vetted, they've all been well researched. Erick himself has actually partnered up with Direct Relief. Now, Erick, could you just tell us really quickly what Direct Relief is about?
Yeah, so what Direct Relief is doing is they are providing medical supplies or PPE, personal protective equipment, to medical staff around the world and some first responders like firemen, police officers. So they're doing masks, full hazmat suits, gloves, face shields, different things like that. So the people that we really need to be supporting right now are the people who don't have the option to self-quarantine, to hashtag stay at home, and the people who are out there really taking care of us and making sure we'll all get through this safely and healthily. So directrelief.org, I fully support them. I've donated, and if you guys can, I invite you to help.
Yes, so please do, guys. It's not compulsory to give, but if you do feel like you learned something, anything, and you have any spare change, spare money, anything you want to give, for a lesson of this caliber, please do donate. And details are in the bottom of the video, or not bottom of the video, but details are below in the description of the video. So again, Erick, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of School Daze.
It was anytime.
Okay.
Let's do it often.
Definitely, we'll be doing it again. We'll have you back. And guys, also, if there's something that you want to learn on an episode of School Daze, whether you want to learn that from Erick or someone else, make sure you let us know. Slide into the DMs. Tell us what you want to learn, because we are here to connect you with creators and give you the lowdown on their creative process, and also those behind the scenes tips and secrets that you might be wondering about. So again, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of School Daze, and we'll see you again.